Hello, viewers. This is sake experiment number 2, Doburoku, rustic Japanese rice wine. Today's recipe is from orizewonderland.com, and this site is from Yoshito Maioka, who is a Japanese guy brewing in Germany. And so this website is in German and Japanese. I'm going to translate the German here. And it explains what Doburoku is and some of the background. And it has a recipe that I'm going to follow today. Some interesting aspects of this recipe: it uses baker's yeast, it's a single stage recipe, and it's deliberately home style or farm style called Doburoku. So it is rustic and I like it already. If you enjoy this video, please click that like button and subscribe, and please share this video wherever it is appropriate. I really appreciate your help in spreading the word about rustic Asian rice wine. I'm brewing another sake recipe at the same time as this one. I'll say more about that later on in this video. Here's the Koji I'm using, Horaya Nama Koji. So I bought this on Amazon. There's some recipes on the back. There's an amazake recipe and some kind of soy sauce recipe, but there's no alcohol recipe here. So that's why I'm really glad that I found the recipe on orizewonderland.com. Let's brew. So the day before we start, we wash the rice. So I have 500 grams of short grain sweet rice. This is what it looks like. Very opaque white. As usual, we have to wash the rice gently, rinsing multiple times. And as I go through this recipe, of course, I'm going to be comparing it with what I know about brewing makgeolli, a single-stage makgeolli recipe. How is this recipe for Doburoku different than what I'm used to brewing makgeolli? Of course, this part is the same. Need to soak this. In this case, I'm going to soak this overnight. And the next morning, I'm going to drain it. Let it drain for 1 hour. And the recipe really emphasizes removing any excess water. So the rice is quite dry now. I'm going to steam it. And since it's a small amount of rice, I'm going to steam it in my old bamboo steamer. So wrap it up in a wet cloth and steam it for 40 minutes. Take it out and spread it out to cool. Let it cool to room temperature. As we're waiting for it to cool, add 100 milliliters of water and a quarter teaspoon of bread yeast. It's been years since I've brewed with bread yeast, so this is sort of fun. I wonder how this is going to work out. And this is the Koji I'm using, and I'm going to use 150 grams of Kome Koji, rice Koji. So now that the steamed rice has cooled, add it to the jar. So notice that proportionally we're using quite a lot of Koji for that amount of rice. Add the water, 650 milliliters, and that's equal to the amount of rice plus the amount of Koji. So for the amount of rice in this recipe, I'm using more Koji here than the amount of nuruk I would use for that amount of rice. And also, it seems like the koji counts as starch since it's made from rice and it's going to ferment similar to the rest of the rice in the batch. So the amount of water seems to reflect that. And I'm going to ferment it in the basement because it's cooler here. It's around 20 degrees Celsius. So the next morning, look at it, it's absorbed the water. It is pretty solid. There might be some liquid near the bottom. I'm not going to stir it yet. That's part of the recipe that it says don't stir it until it becomes more liquid. And then in the evening, it really has become more liquid, and now I'm going to stir it. So that's something different. Before, I would always stir it, even if it wasn't liquefied yet. For the purpose of following this recipe, I waited. The next day, it smells very sweet. And I'm stirring it in the morning and the evening. And day 3, I'm not going to stir it anymore from now on. It still smells sweet. The top of the fridge is a good place for me to photograph the jar, but don't brew on top of a fridge. It will get too hot. And notice the layer of liquid at the bottom, progressing nicely. This looks very similar to a single stage makgeolli. So I'm used to this progression of brewing, these layers. And since this is the first time I'm following this recipe, I'm going to let the duration be exactly as specified, 12 days. So I'm going to wait until day 12 to bottle it. Yeah, so there's a nice clear layer in the middle there. So very similar to as what I'm used to. Okay, so it's bottling day. I'm going to boil my filter bag. Stir the brew one last time. It's very liquid. Smells great. And that's my filter bag. I'm going to carefully place it over and tip it over, and it pours right out. So this worked really well. Nothing is stuck on the jar at all. So poured into the filter bag very well. And it's dripping out already. So I'm just going to squeeze this and get all the liquid out. And it's very easy to filter. That was the quickest filter I've done in a long time. And there's 156 grams of leftovers. That's called sake kasu. And it looks right to me. It's a soft, doughy mass. There's no grains of rice in there. So I'm going to save this. And now it's time to put it in the bottles. So since this was a small recipe, I'm just getting over a liter of output from this recipe. This recipe worked out. I'm also trying a more complex recipe with 4 stages. So wish me luck on that one. Now for this recipe, like I said, it worked out. It fermented well, and I'm going to taste it right now. But I'm going to save my evaluation for 4 days from now. I'm going to let it rest in the fridge a bit, and I'm going to report to you in just a few seconds as to what the result of that tasting is. I want to give a big thanks to Orize Wonderland, Yoshito Maioka, for publishing his recipe. It's been 4 days since I bottled my Doburoku, so let's taste it now. So I'm going to have some of the clear layer first, just to taste it. Oh, so it has a fruity aroma. The taste is like cantaloupe. Yeah, it's definitely like cantaloupe, and cantaloupe even has a kind of astringent aftertaste, and that's what I'm tasting here. There's also sweetness at the end too. So that's I do taste the alcohol. Well, let's taste it how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be cloudy. Let's yeah, it's quite fruity. The texture is great. Whatever sediment is in there, it's very fine. So it feels good. Yeah, pretty strong too. I think there's a bit more flavor mixed together. So I think it's best mixed up. Yeah, okay, and so it starts off sweet. There's this fruity cantaloupe-like flavor. Then the alcohol, a bit of a bite, and a softer finish, a little bit sweet, but a little bit sweet, but also astringent. Yes, so after tasting it, I can feel that astringency on the inside of my mouth. So that's a good result. I'm going to dilute this now with some seltzer water, approximately 1 to 1. So that gives it more, I can taste the rice flavor more now. Oh, and actually this is more of a flavor that I've had in some commercial makklis, and I think that might be because a number of commercial makklis use Koji instead of Nuruk. It's probably easier for their process to use Koji rather than because it's more consistent rather than Nuruk. So this actually ends up what's probably the last time I had this kind of flavor was in commercial makkli, just everyday kind. But this is better because it hasn't been sweetened, and I don't think it needs to be sweetened. This turned out sweet enough as it is, and it is nice and fruity. So big thanks to the creator of orzewonderland.com, where I got this recipe. It worked out perfectly, and I feel like I managed to make real rustic sake following a Japanese recipe. And I'm very glad to be enjoying this Doburoku right now. As always, let me know in the comments if you have any questions about this recipe or any other aspect of brewing rice wine. Thank you for watching.